So I figured in this video that I would share with you guys just a day of getting things ready. So getting my classroom ready and then closing it off at the end of the day. I can't show you in the middle of the day because the kids tend to stay in my classroom all day long. That's just kind of what happens, when it's like a pandemic and everything has changed. But I did want to chat with you guys, like as I'm getting my classroom together today and just kind of doing some odds and ends about a really big topic. And it's something that I've really noticed that over the years of just talking with teachers online and talking with teachers here in my own building, about one of the things that I feel like they have the most difficulty with, and that's teaching ELA. A lot of teachers have this really big negative mindset in some way of ELA and how hard it is and how difficult it is to teach and how difficult it is to understand. And so in this video, I want to share with you 5 different really big ideas of why teachers really struggle with teaching ELA. And when you understand those ideas and you're able to identify which ones really affect you as a teacher, then you're going to find that you have the ability to go out, focus on those areas, and then change that mindset. Because that's kind of the whole goal. We want teachers to love ELA as much as I feel like I love ELA. So I'm going to share those 5 ideas. We're going to get my classroom ready, and then we're going to close it off at the end of the day. So, all right. One of the first things that I always do every morning is I get together our morning message and I just get it projected. I feel like once I have that done, I'm golden. So one of the things that I feel like a ton of this weekend are assessments. We did a lot of tests this week. We had math assessments, we had ELA assessments, and it brings me to my very first point. I think one of the things that teachers really struggle with is the subjectiveness. And what that means is basically that, in math, it's a little bit cut and dry, right? So if I have a math test, I have an answer key. The answer key has an answer here. I can look at that answer and very clearly tell whether the kid got it right or wrong. Now in ELA though, it's a little bit different. We don't have such a cut and dry answer unless you're doing a multiple choice, which if you're doing a multiple choice in ELA, I would really challenge you to go beyond that. But I think a lot of the times teachers want to stick to multiple choice ELAs because it's easier to grade, right? It's easier to assess. This, however, takes more time. When I'm having to read through multiple responses and then I'm having to interpret or kind of get an idea of what's going on in this kid's brain, how did they come up with this answer, that becomes harder. And it also can vary among teachers. So when we're talking about subjectiveness, you can have one teacher look at this and say, well, that looks great. And you might have another teacher that says, well, wait a minute, no, that's not exactly it. It takes more time to analyze versus, again, the cut and dry, there's the answer. It's right or it's wrong. It's more looking and trying to figure out and interpret what the kid is saying. So ELA is very subjective. And one of the things that I tell my students is that in ELA, if you can argue a point and you argue that point well, who am I to tell you that's wrong? Because we can all view instruction from a very different perspective. Your background, the experiences that you've had, the morals that you believe in, all of these different things really allow you to interpret things differently. That's point of view, that's perspective. And who am I to say that you're wrong? So long as you can back yourself up with enough evidence and enough explanation to support your thinking, you could be right. And I think that subjectiveness that's in ELA makes it very intimidating. But if you take the time to really plan out a rubric and you have a rubric that allows you to quickly identify those points, you're not necessarily agreeing or disagreeing with their opinion. You're really looking at whether or not the student, is able to back up their thinking. Are they following the guidelines in order to show that they can reasonably answer this question with enough evidence and enough explanation that is relevant to it. So it's scary. I agree. I was very intimidated in the very beginning, but now when you take the time to really think through, I think the biggest piece in ELA is that you have to be prepared with the instruction that you're reading. So if I give them a test, I would have read that article, that book, whatever it was, so many times. I read it multiple times because, as we tell our students, the more you read it, the more you learn from it. The different ways that you start to view that story. And so I reread it and reread it and reread it, so that way I feel as though I'm an expert in that text. And then it becomes a little less intimidating. So my next point for why teachers really have this just negative mindset with ELA is kind of like a double-edged sword. Is that kind of how is that the term? I can't ever remember. I think it's a double-edged sword. Guys, don't make fun of me in the comments. All right, so what I mean by this is basically that we seem to have in our schools, not all schools, but in quite a few schools, the lack of resources. And so what I mean by lack of resources is we don't really know where to start pulling things for ELA. I don't have a book room, or or I don't have enough resources in my own classroom. I don't get enough money in order to be able to purchase those resources. And with ELA instruction, one of the biggest thing is having really rich and great texts to have conversations about. Not just your, and I'm going to say it, not just your TPT products. That's not what you're going for. You're wanting to use real, authentic text, not the passages that you're printing out every single day, because those are not going to really add any value. How are kids supposed to learn how to do a skill in, a passage, and then all of a sudden be expected to turn around and apply it to their own books? If we're not modeling that for them, if we're not modeling how to take these rich texts, a variety of texts, and apply the skills that we're teaching them, they're never going to do it. So I have to put I have little labels that I put on all my books. So I have these here. I need to put one on my new book that we've just finished. Guys, really, really good. So we don't have enough resources. But then, these are all my little stickers I have cut out. You guys want to see? See? But then, we also have an abundance of resources, which is why I said it's like a double-edged sword. Double-edged sword. And that's because if you go online, you have so many different options for you to choose from when it comes to resources that you can use into your classroom. And this goes back to the passages that you can print out, the people who are posting things on Teachers Pay Teachers, which not all of them are bad, I'm going to just say that, but you have to be very careful, very selective in order to provide the authentic instruction that we should be providing to our students. And so we have kind of this whole, I don't have enough resources, to I have so much information online that we just don't really know where to begin when it comes to ELA. And so it causes us a lot of stress. You're looking at it and you're like, well, how do I know what I'm supposed to pick? How do I know which one's going to be right? How do I know if this is a really good product? And the truth is that, as a teacher, you kind of have to immerse yourself into the literature. And some of you are probably like, I don't have time to read all these books. I agree. I don't have time to read all the books either, and I don't. But what I do is I read it with them. And I just take the time to kind of look at what's out there and, go through the scholastic books. And again, another really great one, favorite that has just come out. And, read those and look at those types of texts. And when you find things that are really good out there, check them out, and save them for every single year. I will go ahead and tell you that, and this is just my little personal plug that I'm going to put in there, but in the Bridging Literacy community, one of the things that I'm really trying to work on to help teachers when it comes to ELA instruction is providing them with a list of those really good texts, not just chapter books, because Lord have mercy, you can't read a chapter book every single time with your class. You're never going to finish everything. But not just chapter books, but picture books and short stories, anthologies, like poetry, all of the different varieties of text that can be targeted to a specific standard and grade level. So I've been separating them by standard, grade level, and it's called the Ultimate Mentor List. The Ultimate Mentor List. And it's just, I'm very proud of it. And I'm proud of the work that we're doing just as a community in order to build this list so that we constantly have this resource to be able to go back to. So I forgot tape. I need to go get tape. I'm gonna go get tape. So, like I said, reason number 2 is that we have not enough resources, and yet we have too many resources. Too many resources, I think, when we come online. Too many resources that maybe your school is trying to kind of push on you, and they're saying, well, you can use this. Oh, and don't forget that we have this subscription, and don't forget that we also have this subscription. So it kind of overwhelms you as a teacher, and I felt that way right at the very beginning when I first started here at this school, because I was introduced to technology for the first time. And one of the biggest things with technology was that we had all these apps, and I was so excited. I was like, oh my gosh, look at all the apps. But at the end, it actually didn't help because I didn't know where to start. I was constantly hopping from one app to another. And if you're hopping from one resource to another, because you want to gain experience with them, it's going to overwhelm you and you're really not going to even remember the resource. So here's my tip for you when it comes to too many resources. Choose like 5 for the year and just stick with those 5. Really learn those 5, become an expert in those 5, and then every year add another 2. And you're going to start to see that you are going to find favorites. You're going to start to find some that really align to your grade level, to your standards. And I think that's really going to help you. Now, if you have not enough resources and you're like, I can't afford to just buy all these books all the time, I feel you because I get in trouble a lot for buying books. My husband's like, why are we buying more books? Didn't you have enough books? No, you never have enough books. Love you. But here's what I can say. Look at the resources that you have in your school, your libraries, your public libraries. And what I would tell you is to start to create a checklist of where you have them for each of your units or for your standards. If you create, like, it could be on a sheet of paper, literally just write down, oh, I found this book in this library, so that every year you're not starting fresh. You're coming back and you're saying, oh, that is a great book. I remembered reading that book. It's here on my page that I have saved. And now I can know exactly where to go back and check that book out. So look at the resources that you have just in your public libraries, your school libraries, inside of your district, and just make a list of them and save them there. And if you also want to join the Berkeley Literacy community, we have that Ultimate Mentor List checklist that we are constantly adding to. So you can definitely check that out. All right, I'm done plugging myself. I promise. Echo, play the Harry Potter soundtrack.
Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, aka Philosopher's Stone, original motion picture by various artists on Amazon Music.
Just in case you're wondering, this is our new read aloud that we have. We read Wolf Hollow. I think it was about a year or 2 ago. It was really, really good. So she came out with Echo Mountain. So far, I'm loving the book. So kids are going to be arriving in just a little bit, and I'm going to go ahead and just check in with you guys later this afternoon. I have a few things that I need to take care of for next week, so I'm not waiting until the last minute. And I'll share some of those things with you, and I'm also going to share the last 3 things that makes ELA instruction really, really difficult. So I will see you guys later. We're going to have a good day. We're going to celebrate. It's One School, One Book celebration, so it's exciting. Bye. It's finally the end of the day, and it was a really nice day. The weather actually was really nice outside. It's super sunny, just makes you feel really good, and the kids really enjoyed Mr. Limoncello's library. We watched it on my Netflix account, and they enjoyed it a ton. It was our One School, One Book, which we do every single year. Everybody in the school gets the same book, and we read it together, and so this is what it looks like. Great book. The movie nothing really kind of matched with the book. Didn't really have much to do with that. But it was still really cute and good, and the kids enjoyed it. So now what I'm going to do is I have to print out a few things. The first thing that I need to print are some graphic organizers. I will tell you guys, even though we have to do everything on our iPads, we try to limit as much paper as possible. I have a handful of kiddos who they just don't turn things in on their iPads. I think when I give them a piece of paper, they are more likely to finish it so that I can assess whether they are understanding what they're doing versus them trying to do it on their iPad. So I print those out just to have them, and I place them in my extra box that's over here on the other side of my bulletin board. So while I'm waiting for this to print, let's talk about the third reason. And this is one that I think really hits ELA really, really hard. And that's that our standards, so if you follow Common Core, or maybe even your state standards, whatever kind of you use, the standards are written extremely broad. And I think they're so broad that they're really hard to interpret. And I've mentioned this so many times, so if you've joined my lives, then you know that I've said this before, but I think if you're reading the standard as a teacher and you're not really given the professional development that you need, which every single school needs to be working on professional development for understanding ELA standards. It's so, so important. But I can read that standard and I can interpret it in one way, and then the teacher down the hall will interpret it in a very different way. And especially with having so much information online, we're looking for guidance online and everybody is kind of sharing different things. And so at the end of the day, it's like, well, what am I supposed to be teaching? What am I supposed to be doing? And what does this look like? That is the biggest thing, is what does it look like? Let's take this standard, for example. Explain how the information contributes to an understanding of the text in which it appears. What does that mean? What does that mean? It's an informational standard for 4th grade, but what does it even mean? So there's written very, very broad, and it just makes it hard to be able to teach it. And I just don't believe that a lot of districts out there are really focusing on providing good standard instruction. Some of my favorite standards that are just really big and broad are going to be like your writing standards. I remember when I first started teaching 4th grade, I was like, well, what does 4th grade writing look like? What am I supposed to be coming up with? Kindergarten was easy. I wanted them to make sentences. 4th grade, where do I go? What is it going to look like? What is my end goal with my students? Because if I didn't have a very clear ending, like an end goal, how was I supposed to articulate that to my students? Because it's just as important for them to understand where they're supposed to be going as it is for the teacher to understand where I'm going with the instruction. So there's one, it says, introduce a topic clearly. You got it. Hey guys, welcome to my story. I'm gonna talk to you about sharks. That's introducing it clearly, but is it 4th grade material clearly? So it's just interesting that these standards are just very big, very broad, and they're really hard to interpret. So every school, if you're a principal, if you're a reading specialist, reading coach, work with your teachers on getting them to understand these standards. When they understand the standards, they will be able to provide amazing instruction, and they're going to understand what they're supposed to be doing on a day-to-day basis on top of that. So I wanted to show you guys the graphic organizer. So I'm doing main idea and key details with 5th grade, but we're talking about identifying multiple main ideas within a similar text. So I do like a normal box and bullets. This is part of the Bridging Literacy Unit 4 for 5th grade, which is all informational. So this is going to be what we're working on next week. I also printed out, which I don't have any laminating pouches, so that kind of stinks. But I have these little think marks. And what I do is I laminate them for my kids, I hole punch them, and then we have them on a ring. So the kids will just continuously add their think marks all year long on this ring. And each think mark has like a different purpose. So this one's going to be specifically for the text structure of description. So I'm going to offer it as an opportunity for them to just kind of pull it and just use it as a reminder of how to identify description as a text structure, because we're also going to go into that as well. And then I have another one for order and sequence, and then I got to still print the next ones for the other 3 text structures that we're going to be discussing. So let's chat. While we're talking about resources, let's chat about the fourth reason. The fourth reason that I think that teachers really struggle when it comes to ELA is that they have a lack of curriculum. And this is partly due to the fact that many districts are starting to kind of pull away from having a standard like reading ELA curriculum. Let's say that they're looking at more like a Harcourt is one that I used when I was in kindergarten, and they might be using something to that extent. Well, a lot of them are starting to get away from that because they realize that it's not authentic for their learners. So with that being said, they're relying on either the teachers or they have a curriculum team that's really working to develop it. But when they're developing these, they're just looking at the standards and they're not really pulling a bunch of really good resources for you. There's not a very good direction of where we're going. And I think one of the things that I've noticed over the past, 9 years now is that a lot of the times they look to these standards and they're like, okay, well, we're going to focus on this standard for about a week, and then we're going to jump to this next standard, or we're going to kind of try to do multiple standards within a week. And that just isn't beneficial for kids. And so one of the things that I have really focused on and trying to develop over the last couple of years is having this kind of cheat sheet unit guide. And my thinking is that with reading and writing, it's all intertwined, it's connected. We have to think of it as one entity instead of trying to continuously separate them, because kids are separating them in their mind versus trying to look for the connections. And our brains work better when we have opportunities to make connections around us. And so separating the two and keeping them separate is not beneficial for kids. So I started looking for consistencies and similarities when it comes to the reading standards and writing standards and connecting them into units. So for my bridging literacy like units overall, and this is like a complete cheat sheet, guys. You can go and grab all of the learning targets in each of the units for 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. You can go grab them for free and you can create your own curriculum all around that. All it does is it helps to make the connection for kids. That's all it ends up doing. So I have worked to create for each month, the kids would have a focus for the writing, and that writing would then be tied to specific reading targets. And those reading targets are what drive kind of what they are supposed to demonstrate within their writing. So if we're talking about developing characters, then I know that I'm going to talk about dialogue. I know that I'm going to talk about intrinsic, extrinsic traits, and I'm going to want to pull that in. If we're going to go into informational or research, then I know that I need to have main idea, key details. Then I know that I need to get into text structures. So each one of those units is specifically designed to help kids make the connections at the end of the day. And I think a lot of schools just really struggle with that part. And I think the curriculum is just all over the place. And even though we are all not all states are doing this, but a lot of us are trying to follow the Common Core so that everybody kind of has this consistency across the US, because we're interpreting them differently and we're writing the curriculum a little bit differently. It really is a struggle. And it was one of the things that I struggled with in the very beginning. I see the standard, I see the vocabulary word, I see the learning targets, but what does that mean? Where am I going? What does it look like at the end of the day? And so having that lack of curriculum, that lack of resources, that lack of understanding when it comes to the standards overall, it feels draining as a teacher. Like ELA teachers, they're like, I'm tired of having to look for stuff. I'm tired of trying to interpret everything and make it, figure it out. They want something that is as cut and dry as math, because math is pretty cut and dry. So how can we help to make ELA a little bit easier to understand? And I think Bridging Literacy has done a really good job of that. And I'm very proud of the work that we've been putting into it. So I highly recommend you guys go and check out that cheat sheet and let me know what you think in the comments, especially when it comes to those units and making those connections. Okay, so now as I'm getting ready to wrap up and leave for the end of the day, one of the other things that I think ELA teachers really struggle with is the amount of content that they're having to cover. So every day they're having to do grammar, vocabulary, writing, reading, and so it tends to be a little much. And a lot of times, the biggest thing I hear is, well, I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time to cover all the standards. And one of the things that I feel like I have found over this journey is that if we make the connections for kids, if we stop trying to kind of shove things, like a lot of things down their throats, then it makes it easier when it comes to planning it out. So one of the examples is like with bridging literacy, because I know that in order for my kids to be able to apply something for writing, which is like a higher level of depth of knowledge, because they are trying to apply something, they have to understand it first. They have to be able to identify it first. That's your reading. And then later they are able to then take that knowledge that they've learned from this author through mentor text, through vocabulary, through questioning and inferring, and then they're able to then put that into their own writing. That's the application piece. So I put a really good emphasis on, building that reading first, then we go back and we apply it into our writing, which is what our units are doing. And so, and this is not me trying to sell my units, guys. This is me simply saying, like, you have to teach the kids, they have to understand it in reading before they can ever apply it into writing. It's going to be the biggest thing. And so one of the things that I really worked hard to do is trying to, one, cut down on the time that I'm spending instructionally, because I know that kids need time to practice. And my time is going to be better served when I am working with kids and giving them feedback on the work that they've been doing, versus me just standing up here and trying to shove information down their throats all day. So with that being said, I know we don't have enough time. However, if you're really creative and you think about, something that you're trying to teach kids doesn't necessarily have to be explicitly taught every single day. When you're consistent enough, which is what bridging literacy does, it's consistent enough when it comes to discussing vocabulary, to making sure that I'm hitting my grammar authentically, by the way, that I'm teaching that reading skill so that they can then apply it into their writing and helping them to make those connections. You're going to see a greater turnout at the end of it. We don't have to have, that constant, like every day, you're going to have a grammar thing, you're going to have a vocabulary thing, you're going to have a reading skill, you're going to have independent reading. It's too much. Think about going to a conference and you spend an entire day at this conference, and you go to like back-to-back sessions, 30-40 minute sessions, and they cram so much information down your throat that at the end of the day, your head hurts, right? You're like, oh, my brain hurts. I feel like that was just information overload. I can't handle it. Well, that's what we're doing to our kids. Instead of helping to simplify the instruction for them, having those authentic daily conversations, not only just in your ELA block, but then also in your read aloud, because I also say that read aloud is separate. I value it being separate as having a discussion with the chapter book, that you're going to find that the kids will start to learn it and they'll get it. So I would highly recommend for you to go and check out, even if you don't want to go and join the Bridging Literacy community, definitely check out the 10-part series that I have, because I talk a lot about how this does save you time. What Bridging Literacy does is helping to build those connections. It's helping to make the consistencies, to help build that consistency when it comes to teaching all of the different types of components that we have to teach, and in an authentic and real way. So check it out. Check out the 10-part series. I'm going to leave leave it in the description box. But if you're also interested in the cheat sheet or the Bridging Literacy community, I will also leave that information there. But that's it. I mean, those are kind of the 5 reasons as to why I really think that a lot of teachers struggle when it comes to ELA instruction. And I promise you that there is a better way of understanding it. I just think that your school, your district they need to give you the right professional development, because with that professional development, with someone to help guide you, it is going to make that whole process of, developing your lessons on a daily basis, delivering the instruction, giving the feedback, so much easier. So that's the end of the day, guys. I am going to head home. It's really pretty outside, and I'm really surprised that my husband has not said that he wanted to go golfing. Feels like golf weather, although it snowed, so there's probably snow everywhere. Duh, Bridget. Don't ignore what you just see right now, because this is not how you treat an iPad at all. Also, got some new AirPods, because I thought I lost mine, but then I found them a few days later, but then I had already bought these. Oh, guys, I'm serious. Got my mask, got my AirPods, got my phone. And yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed this little video. Or just kind of following along with me. I want to know, do you agree when it comes to the five reasons why I think teachers really struggle when it comes to ELA instruction? Do you agree with me? Do you find one that's really difficult for you? Let me know down in the comments. Share it because I'm really intrigued. I want to be able to help serve you more, help you more when it comes to ELA instruction. I want to make things easier for you. So what area out of the five do you feel like you need the most help with? Put it down in the comments. Let's start a conversation, and I look forward to hopefully helping you guys out over the next few months so that you can be prepared for the next school year. Like, oh my gosh, we're already. Do you think about the next school year this early? I do. It's really weird. I know. All right. I am going to go ahead and go home. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you are new to my channel, hello. My name is Bridget Spackman. I'm a multi-age teacher except for this year. This year I'm only doing 5th grade. I teach all content areas, and I love 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. I have a huge passion for ELA instruction, and I talk all things ELA, all things personalized learning, and really making sure that we're customizing the education for our kids. So you can hit that subscribe button if you dig in this channel and what I'm saying. And also make sure to hit the notification bell so that you can be notified every time I go live, which will be happening soon. So guys, just give me a little bit more time. So every time I go live or I upload a new video, and I will see you all next time.